Hey guys, so today I thought I would talk about how the battle system in my game has changed over the last 2.5 years or so. Because I had the thought recently that I'm kind of at the point now where all the basic systems in my game are built. There's a few little extra things I'd like to add along the way and introduce further on in the game, but it's one of those things where most of the basic game is built. So it's been a long way since starting with a small basic battle system and not knowing how to program a tactics system at all. So I thought I would talk about what kind of journey the battle system has been through and how it has improved over different kind of aspects of the battle system. So the first thing is graphics and appearance. So initially, when I started making the battle system, I was following a tutorial, Game Maker Rob's tutorial for battle tactics system. It's amazing. It's really good. And I was using placeholders because I was following a tutorial, so I didn't actually have graphics of my own made up yet. And when I started actually making my own graphics, I thought initially I was going to go for a lower resolution. So I had a bunch of kind of lower resolution tiles made up. And then my brain just went, but what if we had a bit more detail? And I think sometimes if you actually have a higher resolution in pixel art, it can be a little bit easier than going for super low resolution. So I think I did myself a service in the end and made it easier on myself, because otherwise it might have actually been quite difficult to get proper visual information that what I wanted. Like, it's hard once you go to a certain point of low pixels to actually express what you need to express. So I upgraded the resolution of everything, made bigger tiles, added more decorations, and more importantly, added animations, which really brought the whole thing to life. The enemy AI basically started off with just a basic ability to move, to do a melee attack, and then do a ranged attack. So it wasn't anything wildly impressive. But eventually I added more movement types. So enemies can now do like status effect attacks or AoE attacks, and they also can make smart decisions around how they do those attacks, more importantly. So there are much more enemy AI types where they have different kinds of attacks and they decide to do different attacks in different ways. And also, a while after that, I decided to make them more defensive. So they actually basically try to choose a safe square to move to if they can, after they've attacked, that is. And they will also try and face away from any nearby players or put their back towards something that blocks off their back for any back attacks. My game has also undergone a UI overhaul since it started. While my UI isn't the most groundbreaking or amazing or even super decent UI in the world, it's much better from when it started. And basically, when I started out, I even wrote out the names of the actual actions just on the Ace Bright menu I was making. I knew that was just going to be a placeholder anyways, but when I changed it, I was relieved because it looked a little bit silly. But not only did I change that, but I also added the ability to actually see what actions were being taken, because I didn't have that initially. And as well as that, when the action is being shown, it also shows the percentage chance to hit, as well as the damage that will be dealt. There's also an AoE UI that shows, if you hover over each enemy, how much damage will be done to each of those enemies as well. And more recently, something that I added pretty much just before the beta released actually, is the ability to hover over enemies and players and check their health, which is something I didn't even think about adding. And when I realized it was missing, I was like, oh yeah, this is really essential for a tactics game. Another thing that has changed quite a bit is the accuracy system. So accuracy used to be just based on two numbers. One of them is the accuracy multiplier of the specific action you've chosen. So for example, AoEs generally have a lower accuracy multiplier because you're trying to hit multiple squares, so less of a chance to hit each square. While as, you know, single targets will always have generally an accuracy multiplier of 1. But it's the accuracy multiplier multiplied by the character's accuracy, which you can see in game. Each character has an accuracy stat, and that affects their crits and also their base chance to hit. But then eventually I added positionals, which I always want to add because it's a tactics game and there has to be some kind of tactical element to it. So I added positionals where if you attack from the sides, you have a slight increased chance to hit. If you attack from the back, you have a good increased chance to hit. And enemies are also aware of this, and enemies will try to hit you from the best positional side as well. It's worth noting. And then when I was thinking about ranged attacks, it made sense to me that, say, for a slingshot, an attack from point blank range was not going to do as much damage as an attack from max distance. So the further you are away from the enemy, like the closer you are to the max range of the actual attack that you're doing, if you're doing a ranged attack, the better chance you have to actually hit. And then after that, quite recently actually, I added basically a height chance difference. So if you are above an enemy and attacking down onto that enemy, then you have a higher chance to hit, while as if you are below the enemy and you're attacking up, then you have a lower chance to hit, which makes a lot of sense to me, I feel. If you're attacking down, you have much more space, whilst if you're attacking up, you have a bit less space, that kind of thing. But I did want terrain to play a part, especially for ranged attacks. Like if you're up on a giant hill and you're overlooking an enemy, you should have a really good chance to hit them, especially if you're at that max distance. And then another thing that has changed is the actual battle maps. So initially I had very much just squares to test everything in. So every battle map was just a square. I was just testing within this square. And then eventually I tried to design a few battle maps. And then I realized all the battle maps were really flat and uninteresting. So then I rechanged all of those battle maps to have a little bit more decoration, a bit more variety, and more importantly, more interesting terrain. So you can actually go a bit more up and down on the map, and enemies and players can move in more interesting and tactical ways. There's like a couple of other changes as well that I have that don't really fit into any of these nice categories. So player actions. So I've added quite a lot of player actions. They used to just have basically a ranged attack and a melee attack, and that was kind of it, similar to the enemies actually. But now they have a few different attacks and a few different kind of buffs that they can actually apply to themselves. So it just adds a bit more variety and makes everything more interesting and gives a little bit more choice. And another thing that I added was actually a difference in party member speeds. So each party member used to just have a speed of 3, but now the ranged party member actually has a speed of 2, and Leopold, the melee member, has a speed of 4, which makes sense because one of them has to travel more distance and the other doesn't because he does ranged attacks. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little video of me reminiscing about my old little tactics game versus the game it is now. Please don't forget to like and comment and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't, to wishlist Chimeral Fantasy if you like the look of it. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.